So timesheets are how most employers keep track of their employees' schedule. So when you fill out a timesheet or a timesheet is given to you by your employer, make sure that the hours are correct on your timesheet. Secondly, check for overtime. And there's two ways, remember, to earn overtime. One is if you work more than 8 hours a day. And the second is if you work more than 40 hours a week. This is per day, and this one's per week. And we've done examples like that in the last few lessons. So we're going to give you some practice at that in this lesson. So first question, before we tackle any specific examples, is do you get paid for your lunch hour? Well, from your lesson 2 material, please remember that lunch hours are unpaid work. So you do not get paid for your lunch hour. Now, some employers, again, will be generous and pay you for it. They are required to provide you with a lunch hour. So you do need a break, but you will not get paid for it. So that is why when we take a look at Laurel's timesheet, it has a start time, time she goes for lunch, and the end time. And we're going to figure out how much her wage, how much she will make if she makes $16.50 an hour. Now, in that timesheet, she works some very long days that might involve overtime. So we're going to calculate the overtime wage before we start, and that is 1.5 times her regular wage of $16.50, and that works out to be $24.75 an hour. Right, the next step is to look at that timesheet, and we actually have to calculate how many hours there are in that timesheet. So if I look at Monday, from starting at 8 and going to 12, that is 4 hours in the morning. And from 1 to 5 in the afternoon is another 4 hours. So it's a total of an 8-hour day on Monday. On Tuesday, a little bit later start, but it's still a 4-hour morning. And from 2:30 to 7 is 4.5 hours. So notice that's an 8.5-hour day. So she's working longer than the 8 hours. She'll be paid some overtime for that day. From 7:30 to 11:30 is 4 hours. And from 12 to 6:30 is 6.5, so that's a total of 10.5 hours, a very long day. And on Friday, it's 3 hours in the morning, plus 6.5 hours in the evening or afternoon shift, and that's a total of 9.5 hours. So let's use the chart that we had in the previous lessons to copy down that information that we just calculated. So on Monday, she worked 8 hours. That means 8 hours of regular work and no overtime. On Tuesday, it was 8.5 hours, 8 hours of regular work and a half an hour of overtime. Wednesday, there was no work at all. That was obviously a break day. Thursday, she worked 10.5 hours, which means 8 hours regular and 2.5 overtime. That was the very long day. Friday, it was 9.5 hours, 8 hours of regular work, and 1.5 hours of overtime. So that makes the total amount of overtime, adding these up here, 4.5 hours. She's made 32 hours of regular work, so 36.5 hours altogether. This is not over 40, so she won't get paid anything for working a long week, except that the daily overtime, there is some daily overtime, and that's what we need to make sure we calculate. So her regular wage, which is all the regular hours, are 32 hours times $16.50 an hour, works out to be $512. Her overtime wage, there's 4.5 hours times $24.75 an hour. And that's what we calculated on the last slide, that rate. that equals $111.375. So her total wage is adding these two together, her regular plus her overtime, and that works out to be $623.375. Now remember, we're talking about dollars and cents, so 3 decimal places doesn't make sense, and we're going to round to the nearest cent. So $623.38. That is her weekly wage before deductions.